Welcome to Pinball Mayhem. My name's Jeremy Ajma, and as you can see, this is Pinbot. I like to say this is my desert island pin. I love Pinbot. I haven't always loved Pinbot, but since I've got it here in the collection in the last few years, it's really grown on me a lot. My earliest memory of this particular game is playing it in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, when I was probably 15 or 16 years old, and at the London Square Mall at the Gold Mine Arcade. Kind of a weird spot with, kind of the gold mine type lamps in it, and, shade carpeting on the walls. Kind of a weird atmosphere, that's for sure, dimly lit. But it was kind of funny because I really certainly wasn't into pinball too much. I liked pinball machines, but I remember the thing was handing out free credits like crazy, and I just kept playing. It was the end of the night, and the operator just kind of walked over after a while, shut it off, said, okay, we're closing up shop, thanks for playing. So kind of one of them weird, funky memories. But this game has been really good to me. It was a good project when I got it. I had a lot of good bones, shall we say. Cleaned up the playfield and stuff. But I was streaming it over this last weekend, and I'm going to put a clip in here as to what it was doing. Beautiful. Looking good. Ah. Hello? Ah, well, my son's been playing this a lot, so things are bound to happen. Alright, what do we got going on here? Get so I can see at least. What the heck? I can hear the switch clicking. Almost all of the coils quit working, and it's like, what the heck's going on? I was scratching my head, had out the multimeter and stuff, determined the fuses were good. I wasn't sure where to go. And it's like, great, stream's going to be done before it hardly starts. But thank you very much. Big thanks, shout out to Dave Brennan from Dave's Arcade, and also working for American Pinball. I really want to say thanks, Dave. His suggestion was, well, if the fuse looks good and you got some power going on up there, it's probably a connector, and he was correct. So what we need to do is pull out the power board where I found that bad connector, change out the header pins, and change out the connector on the harness, and just look over everything as we go. All right, here we are. Back box is open, of course, as you can see. This is our power supply, power board as I like to call it. We've got a series of push-on connectors here, nothing too difficult, and got another connector here that's on the end of a wire that's wired directly into the board. This is the way it's meant to be. What we're going to do is we're going to pull off the screws, and the important thing to note is you really need all the screws. If there are screws missing from your power board, head to the hardware store and replace them, because it helps the grounding and keeps everything working correctly. As you can see, we've got some newer capacitors on here. These are fine. The friend that I bought it from, this game from, did do some work on this board, and his work was very good. I don't blame him for any of this stuff. Can't expect him to change every single connector and header pin on every single board in here. This is pinball. These machines are meant to be fixed when they break, and it's okay if they break because they are fixable. So I'm just going to pull this out, and these are just push-on connectors. You just wiggle them real carefully and pull them out. And the great thing about a lot of these harnesses is because Williams and other manufacturers use so much wire, they don't put extra wire on harnesses. So you're not going to have a wire that comes out into the bottom have a whole bunch of extra slack and be able to go up to the top. So it's pretty much foolproof. You're not going to end up putting the wrong connector on in the wrong spot. Okay, I've got things pulled out. This is how I buy these sections. These are longer sections. They're made by Molex. They're meant to be cut into individual, lengths, so it's cheaper to buy the longer ones and then cut them down. So I've cut one down to the correct number of spaces. This is 9 spaces for this instance. And we'll just take our cutters and get them right down in here. Cut out the pin that doesn't need to be there. That'll go right there. The original pins are round. These are square, and they'll fit. They have much better contact with the higher amperage style contacts I'm going to put in on the connector for this. This is my desoldering station that I've had for many years. It's just a little suction device on here, and it holds the solder up here, and you got to empty it quite frequently, but This thing has paid for itself. I bought this when I was working on jukeboxes. That's why I started out in the hobby. So I've had this thing probably not quite 20 years, but it's lasted me a good long time. The trick to using, that I've found in using the desoldering tool, is to wait. Let the solder melt fully, and that will transfer the heat down through the pin and let the solder melt on the other side. Then activate the tool. I like to wiggle it a little bit, and then it pulls the solder from both sides, and I should be able to do this without damaging the board. Some boards are very delicate. This one I don't believe is, so we'll just go down the row and we'll get her done. Also, keep the tool engaged after you pull it off for a second so it clears the internal bits there. Okay, now if everything was done correctly, this should pull right out. Just give it a good wiggle, and it comes right out without, see, there's no solder pads or whatever that have come apart. We'll flip over the board and we'll show you what the other side looks like. As you can see, no damage done whatsoever to the board. This new piece will fit in perfectly. Gonna go right there and snap in. That will work absolutely beautiful. Let's get a close-up of the other side of this board here. Now, you could tell that the board had been overheated, not necessarily the board, but the solder joints have gotten overheated at one time because the rosin was kind of oozing out on them. So this is a high current area, and it's good that we're doing this. And again, no damage has been done. I'll clean up this with some rubbing alcohol and toothbrush. I'm also gonna, these are the general illumination circuits. Especially since I'm running incandescent bulbs, I'm gonna clean this area up too. Make sure there's good connection there. Okay, let's get soldering. Put this guy up in here. It's a little bit of a loose fit, so we're going to tack one pin in a little bit. I'm going to hold it on the far side here. And we'll get a little solder on one pin, just enough to hold everything in position. Okay, that was pretty straightforward. Let's get started. Just so the board doesn't get too hot, I'm going to skip every other pin. Then we'll go back and get those. I'm using a high quality lead solder. The smoke you see there is not lead that's coming up, it's the rosin. This is made by Kester. Okay, let's go back and get those other guys. Now what I'll do is I will clean off the rosin with a heavy-duty toothbrush. You can use any kind of toothbrush. This is like a gun cleaning brush. It's used in a lot of industries and whatnot. I learned about these brushes when at the automotive store. They used them for detailing cars. But this is a really stiff bristle brush, and it works great. And I got my alcohol dispenser here, rubbing alcohol, and we'll clean these up and we'll take another look before we put it back in the game. Okay, and taking a look at these pins, it turned out really good. You might be concerned because actually all four of these have glommed onto it. Same with here, but if you look at the trace, All four of these are of the same polarity, or all tied together up here anyway, so there's nothing wrong with that. Same thing over here. So this just provides two areas of power for the solenoids on the rest of the game. And on the flip side here, it looks great. It's in straight, not a problem. I also worked on these, this bundle of wires. They look good as well. And we are ready to put this in. Here we are zoomed in on the connectors, and what you got to remember is I'm about halfway through here. Do one wire at a time. These are also the upgraded Molex Trifurcon connectors. They grab the pin on 3 sides versus just one, so they are going to outperform the original connector. And as you can see on that original connector right there, it's starting to turn brown from the heat, and that's just a factor of age. There's not much getting around it. That's for the solenoid power. Alrighty, let's turn the power on, cross our fingers, and hope we don't release any magic smoke. First power on. Excellent. Everything seems to be working. Let's fire it up. Move the camera a little bit, and we'll just do a little quick gameplay.
Pinball circuit activated.